Hello everyone. Okay, I had a buffer of 5 minutes with the song playing. I'm just finishing setting up right now. And that includes a lot of stuff actually. Yeah, I wanted to announce the stream a bit early just so I could I guess get people joining and get people interested and have people have time to join without missing the beginning of this talk. Now I have to actually do it. I have to actually do it, man. Okay, so that's out of the way. That might work. Oh, there we go. Hi. Let's look at here. And now I guess I keep this here. Probably fine just to use my mouse for this and this here. Oh goodness. What? Why did it switch captures? Funny. Oh, that's terrifying. I had a game capture setup in here, huh? Remove game capture, but also Dance Spy, not a game. Game, Windows, desktop. There we go. That's probably, hopefully working. Alright, let's start. Part 2 of this tutorial is going to be me talking about the game code and why it was just extremely tempting to just scroll through game code in DNSpy and show and talk as much as I could. That's one, it's not too interesting, it's not too didactic, and also it's not very legal. I really shouldn't be showing the game's code on the internet like this for people who potentially don't own the game. And even for those who own, say like it's a very gray area modding and dealing with the game code, decompile, etc. So let's not do that. But know that you as the modder, you as someone who's gonna mod this game, it's pretty good practice to just go through here and try and find the stuff that makes the game tick. What makes popcorn pop or slug cat slug, you know? But I won't do it here. Instead, I have prepared pretty magical diagram. I might just want to remove the rulers real quick. View, no rulers. And I think I'll be talking about this today with you guys. It is intimidating. Yes, and it is very intimidating. And this isn't even like... This might be 1% of the classes in the game. Lines of code wise might be actually a significant amount. Like if you go through all the lines of code of all the classes that are mentioned here, it might be a solid, I don't know, 20% of the lines of code in the game. But yeah, so essentially it's where the most important stuff is, and it's why I'll try and explain as best as I can how it works, how control flows between one and another, what holds a reference to what, and how the hell do you get from launching the game into having a slug cat on screen. To assist me, why am I getting cross-eyed every now and then? Just when I look to the right, maybe I'm just sad. If I make a sad face, yeah. If I frown, I get cross eyes. So yeah, you just gotta make a happy face instead. Perfect. I'm in pain. Yeah. To help navigate the cell, I have added a tiny arm to Slug Cat. So hello Slug Cat. Slug Cat now has a tiny arm. And it stretches a lot just for comedic purposes, but to try and help you guys navigate this mess without looking at a tiny pointer. I'm looking in my recording and this is ridiculous already, and I love it so much. Yeah, Rainward. So how do we start? I guess we start by the start. If you browse to Rainward class, it has a start method, which is the entry point for a mono behavior class, which is a class that interacts with Unity. So Unity has on stage an instance of Rainward. It starts it off, and Rainward once started the thing. Starts by... okay, if I do a happy face, I get the stone face, which is much better. It starts by loading progression, loading several different resources, and instantiating a process manager. Let me do one thing here real quick. I want to not have the song way too intense. Way too intense. Also too intense. Damn it. Much better. I want to have a new layer. I want to lock those two just in case. And this new layer, we're gonna make some red lines. So Rainward start loads a bunch of stuff and instantiates a process manager. Process manager is a different class. And when you see this guy, it's when you're going to realize that Rainward doesn't use Unity scene management, doesn't use Unity object management, doesn't use Unity anything. Instead, it reinvents everything from scratch in here. So Rainward starts a process manager, and Rainward, when it updates, it simply calls that process manage.update, which is down here. Process manager is in charge of controlling the audio system and the Steam system, which run like parallel to the game. So no matter whether the game is stuck or etc., Steam is still running, audio is still running, and whatever is the main task that the process manager is running, it is running. You're gonna see this in the update. You're gonna see this the whole time current main loop, which is whatever the game is currently doing. How does it switches to do something else is through upcoming processes. So it can have like a different process that it's going to switch to. And it obviously has the concept of switching processes, which is shut down one, start the next, and then there's like a communication between the two. So previous process can send information into the new process, which is really cool. It's how you get information about which ring, how much food you have in the sleep screen, what's your karma in the sleep screen. And I think when you load in the statistics page for Hunter, it gets that info from the character selector screen for some reason. Okay, that is process manager. It runs the main process. Whatever are main processes, main loops, it can be the main menu, it can be the intro row, it can be a slideshow, it can be the game, it can be the statistics page, it can be the options menu, it can be some test pages that were left into the game that you can switch to if you know what you're doing. So there's like a test settings page for the console, like a simplified version of settings. There is a regional select page that they showcased in one of the showcases for the game, and it just lets you pick a region and start the game in dev mode. But the main loop mainly loops, it updates. And the way it updates has two steps. It has a certain update and a graph update, and those two run at different rates. So raw update comes from Unity update, which, if you know anything about Unity, it's running as fast as it can, unless you have VSync enabled. But typically it's running as fast as it can. So this method here is just running all the time, but we know that the physics have to run at slower step. So this update is set up to run at a target frame rate, which is 40 FPS typically. It can change. Oh my goodness, writing from mouse is awful. I hate it. And then graphics update just runs every frame as fast as it can too. Now, that's for all main loops, and Rainward game is just one type of main loop. It does a lot more stuff than that, but the basics are here. Every frame it updates at a certain frame rate, and it does a graphics update as fast as it can. Okay, so what does Rainward game do? So, like, this is called Rainward game. It's the in-game content, not the menus, not the settings, not the slideshows. This is a world with Slugcat in it. Not necessarily Slugcat in it. We'll get there. On its constructor, it initializes a lot of stuff, like a heck load of stuff. It's probably the biggest constructor you've ever seen in any video game. It starts the shortcut system, the rain cycle, it starts the cameras, it starts what's called a session, which is like player-related data, your food, what you ate, what you killed, how well is the player doing. It instantiates our overworld. Overworld takes care of the world loading. And it does a lot of stuff with setup values. So setup values is a bunch of options that you have in this game. For like adding player 1, which is the default, adding player 2, because yes, there is a multiplayer built into the game that Jolly makes use of. And also it has infinite options for spawning all types of creatures into whatever room the game first loaded. So a bunch of values for like spawning a dozen vultures, a dozen DOLs, a dozen anything that you can imagine, probably because the devs needed to test their AI, their individual variations, their everything. Will the strings be archived? Yes, I'll do my best to do so. Okay, setup values. This includes, by the way, spawning the player. Spawning the player happens in here. Setup value. There's a setup value for player 1. If you disable it, the game is gonna find something else to follow. It's magnificent. And a room realizer. So this is the guy that makes sure that rooms load before you get to rooms, or tries to, and rooms unload when they're no longer needed, so to spare resources. The way this is set up, it feels like it was added pretty late into the game, and the game must maybe just have just the currently observed room be fully loaded and everything else unloaded. I don't know, it's hard to tell. That was just an initialization code, and then it goes into actually running everything. And what is running everything? Well, for once, it checks every frame if the game has been tinkered with. Very important. It checks if the game is paused, updates the pause menu, and doesn't run the rest. It updates the camera. Now that's a bit weird, right? Because we just mentioned that the physics, the physics update and the, oh Christ, here. The physics update and the graphics update are not tied, but in update we're updating the camera. Also, the camera has physics stuff to do it too, in a sense, not physics, but it has to follow the player. Here. It follows the player around. I think the shakes, how the camera shakes or how the camera moves is all set here. Then the game updates one abstract room. We might get to this much later. And it updates all the active rooms. It also updates anything that's loading, like loading rooms or loading worlds. And that's it. All the magic happens. All the magic for the game as we know happens in here. The camera updates. I think it should have mentioned that the shortcut system also updates here. Camera updates, shortcut system updates. One abstract room updates. It's not random, it's like round robin. Updates active rooms, and this is where most of the things of the game happen in here. Updates loading rooms. Also updates like some global stuff, like global scavenger AI for missions, global batfly AI for migrations, global rain for like just time passing. Happens in here. Rain word game update. This game is not exemplary structure, I wouldn't say, no. It's really unique, it's really interesting to learn and decipher, and that's maybe why it deserves like a stream to explain why and how it's made. And unless you're really into modding Rainward, this is almost useless information. Maybe if you're a game dev, you might learn like a couple tricks, interesting tricks from here. We'll get to those interesting tricks much later though. Okay, we mentioned that Rainward game instantiates a lot of stuff. It just creates a shortcut system, camera system, sessions, overall type of values. We'll go through a few of these. First, Overworld. Very briefly, it just manages a world loader and loading worlds and switching regions and gates. So when a gate is switching a region, it's the Overworld that is managing loading the one and unloading the previous, pretty much. A word loader, it loads words. It builds a list of abstract rooms, it builds a list of abstract creatures, and it shows all that into a new world. A world is the place where the game happens. So a world here is what you understand for a region. A region is a world. And that's gonna have the following. It's gonna have abstract rooms. It's gonna have a lot of things indexed for like performance. Nodes, what's a shelter, what's a gate, where everything is. It's gonna have a list of active rooms, like the rooms where the stuff is happening. And it's gonna also know what the loading rooms are, stuff that is currently being loaded. I'll just keep diving deeper and deeper until we get to the meta stuff. So, most important thing here is the abstract room, which is a part of the region. So the abstract room is the unloaded room. It has unloaded things. It has entities, which are abstract word entities. We'll get to that in a second. It has a list of just creatures, because creatures like to know what the other creatures are, and I guess scanning the entities list all the time is annoying. It has indent entities, which are a weird concept. These guys are like a weird catch if you're new to the code base. These are things that are in the room, but aren't in the room. When something enters the den, it technically has left the room, but it's still in the room. Nodes are every entrance and exit. That includes creatures' dens, teleportation pipes, the sky entrance, the side entrances. It has connectivity information between those nodes. This is loaded from the baked maps, and it tells which nodes can reach other nodes. Say, like you have a room which has an entrance on the left and an entrance to the right, and you have to store the information that this entrance is accessible from this entrance for like a ground creature or a flying creature or a swimming creature. That information lives here. Connections to other rooms, because you don't have a single abstract room, you're gonna have a map of connections. So yeah, how one room leads to another. Quantified creatures. Quantified creatures are batflies, leeches, and spiders. There might be some more that I'm forgetting. Those are basically too simple to keep track of as an individual, so it just stores them as a number. So say I have the number 5 for batflies in this room. This room has 5 batflies, no need to simulate those individually. Okay, most important thing here are entities. So we go talk about abstract word entities. Abstract word entities are things that belong to a word, anything. It has a word position, it has an ID, a unique ID, and it has information whether it's in indent or not, because that was just so weird that they made it that way. They had to store it somewhere. Abstract word entities, the most common type that you see, are abstract physical objects. I don't even know if there's other types. There might be. I don't remember. Physical objects. Abstract physical objects. These guys have a type. You won't see the difference until they're realized, because right now they're abstract. They can be realized, they can be abstract, they can move between rooms. Like code for leaving a room and entering a room is all in here. They can have objects stuck to it, so 2 objects connected, a spear connected to a lizard. They're gonna, when they leave the room and they abstractize, they become abstract, it's still going to remember that one is stuck to the other. It has code for serializing and deserializing. So this is very important. This is the save system. Save system. An abstract physical object can be saved. It can be restored from a save. So that's awesome. Another type of abstract physical object, the most important one probably, is an abstract creature. So when you realize an abstract object that has the type of a creature, its type is literally going to be creature type. It becomes an abstract creature. It's tied to being an abstract creature. An abstract creature has a template which specifies exactly which creature is going to spawn here. It has a personality, which determines a bunch of weird stats like sympathy, dominance, etc. It's important for how they react to each other. Has a state. The state of a creature means whether it's dead or alive, means whether it has health, or it has like a simplified version of health that the game uses a lot for a lot of stuff, including Slugcat. It can have an abstract AI, which controls how it's going to migrate between rooms when it's unloaded. And it also controls some other stuff too. It's very complicated. Abstract creature. Another type of abstract physical object is an abstract consumable. It's just how the game manages those things that you can place in rooms. And that Slugcat can pick up and consume. I think that was it for this section here though. So we went all the way through abstract room and abstract world entity and abstract everything, and we talked through that. Now we could maybe talk more about what's the active rooms and the loading rooms and stuff that is in the rooms, because that's also awesome. Let's talk about the room preparer, which is how rooms are loaded. So when the game loads here in World Loader, it loads the abstract rooms and the very simplified version of connectivity. And when it's the real deal that's happening, there is like a whole 2 or 3 classes involved for actually loading and preparing a room. Read the file, if needed, bake it or update it to the latest version of the room file, because the room file had like 20 versions and they just kept adding more stuff and fixing stuff. Read AI maps. Now this is a weird one, but the grid of a room, rooms are made of tiles if you didn't realize so far, but rooms are made of tiles. But the game stores this grid and it stores the information. I'll have to zoom this to draw it, damn it. It stores the information on how you can move from one grid to the other for each primitive type of creature. So say this is solid, it's gonna store that on a tile above a solid, a creature can move from this tile to this tile, and from this tile to this tile, and it can drop all the way. That's all stored, it's pre-calculated. This is the AI map. I'll just leave it here, won't bother. What isn't pre-calculated though, and they should have done it because it takes a while to load, it's proximity maps and shortcuts. So whenever a room is loaded, it has to remap how close to a wall everything is for the AI to work properly, and it has to refine what shortcuts are, which shortcut leads to. Once that's done, the room is ready. So what the hell is a room? Room is where the stuff happens. A room is initialized by reading the settings and then placing everything that needs to be placed in it. So the place objects happen here at the start, and then the room is loaded. This is when the room preparer actually does all this thing and loads it into the room. When the shortcuts are ready, stuff can start to be placed into the room. So like the simplest creatures that don't have an AI can enter the room when the shortcuts are ready. That includes Slugcat. Otherwise, it has to wait for a second stage when the AI maps have been loaded and proximity maps too, and then the room is ready for AI. Room holds what's called an updatable and deletable. It can be updated and can be deleted. Room holds geometry, so that stuff that came from the file became tile data. It is the geometry. And the room does the physics. I repeat, the room does the physics. Yes, so object collision is all sorted out by the room. Maybe I'll add this here. Room has 3. Oh my goodness, drawing from mouse sucks. My tablet is configured for the other screen. I won't be used to use my tablet. The room has 3 physical layers. What does that mean? The room has 3 layers where physical objects only interact with each other. Objects on layer 1 only interact with objects on layer 1, objects on layer 2, only with layer 2, etc, etc. I recall it being vaguely that there might be exceptions. I think it's like it's gonna interact with the numbers below it, etc. It's set up like this. It does the thing. Yeah, room manages object-to-object physics. Weird, right? Room also updates the updatables and deletables. So let's see how the updatables and deletables work. They have absolutely nothing in them. They literally can be just updatable and deletable. They don't necessarily have a position. They aren't necessarily linked to anything abstract. They can be like fluff. They can either be a creature or they can be like those shards that fall from the echo when the echo is active. Those tiny shards that flip in the air. I just update those on deletables, like cosmetics. There's a type called, I think it's cosmetic sprite. That is one of the most basic types of updatables and deletables. A bunch of room effects, like room-wide effects, are also updatable and deletable. They don't need a position. But let's get to the stuff that is actually interesting. Physical object. A physical object is an updatable and deletable. It belongs to a room. Is linked, possibly. It's actually always linked, but it's fake. But it is. It's linked to an abstract physical object. Those guys that we saw in the abstract space there, when they realize they become a physical object in the realized room, everything comes together. This big asterisk here is because you'll be seeing some cases where the game needs something physical, but it doesn't have to be kept track of in the abstract space. So it just quickly creates a one-off and discards it when it's done. So it isn't necessarily tied to being an abstract thing that exists in the world, just there because it needs it. A physical object has chunks of physics. We'll get there in just a second. Hold yourself. A physical object collides, has a notion of collisions and being pushed around and moving around. And it can have a graphics module. I think they all do. We mentioned chunks. Very exciting. Chunks have size, mass, friction, gravity, speed, inertia, and they are circles. They are limited to circle geometry. All this game does is collide in circles to stuff. The body chunk is responsible for colliding with terrain. Very important here. So a physical object, it's composed of body chunks that have each one their individual physics. And that's part of why this game is like physicky, and things have like weight and they shake and they bounce, with like the separate chunks having a little bit of inertia and moving, like making stuff move like a string or like a pill. Alright, that was physical object. Oh, I forgot to add the creature here. I was gonna go a little bit in deep about a creature. A creature is just a physical object. With AI. I will save the AI talk for a different show. It gets really complicated real fast. I could spend definitely an hour talking about it. But that was physical object, body chunk. We also mentioned a graphic module. So the graphics module is linked to the physical object. It isn't graphic module. It is not the only drawable thing in this game. We'll get to that in a second here. But it is a drawable thing. It is linked to a physical object, and it only needs to exist when that object is being observed. Object leaves the currently observed room, this guy isn't needed anymore. Object never enters room, that thing never gets a graphics module. So it's a way of the game saving resources, completely ignoring the visuals of stuff that it doesn't have to even load or draw. The graphics module, very important concept, it updates at the physics rate. So graphics module.update happens at the same rate of the physics. It happens actually immediately after physics. Typically it's physics update, graphics update, and then like a callback to tell the physics object that its graphics module has updated to a new state. Graphics module is drawable, and it can have a fairly complicated subcontainer system. Lizard chomps a slugcat. Now the slugcat is added to a subcontainer of the lizard graphics, so it can stay between the jaws. It's adorably complicated. I love it. Is that everything for physical if we skip creatures? Can mention weapons. Weapons are another type of physical object. Creatures are a physical object. Weapons. Oh Christ. Are also a type of physical object. But the basic idea is Room realized has physical objects. Room manages their physics. Physical objects all have chunks that also do the physics, and physical objects can be creatures or weapons. Or are there more types? There might be more types. Those are the main ones. Physical objects can have a graphics module when they are observed, and that's probably the most. Most of what you see? No, that's a lie. There are way more things that the game can draw than it's one of the things that you see on screen. There we go. Okay, we mentioned room, and the physics system. So this is the realized world. We mentioned the abstract world up here. This is in the middle here. This is the realized world, and we are about to get the drawable world, the visible world. So we mentioned that the Rain World games initialize a camera. Cameras. Yes, the game has support for multiple cameras. It is great. I quickly messed around with that. You can make a split screen mod pretty easily. I've done that already. It's not fun to play because seeing only half of the screen at every given time is just awful for this game. It's not balanced to be played that way. But yeah, considering a single camera now. A camera follows a creature. A camera loads background PNGs. I repeat, the background PNGs, the maps, the renders are just images, PNGs, they have no physicality to them at all. All the physics are in a TXT file that the ROM loader loaded way back. The graphics are the graphics, they don't interfere with physics. Stop saying that they do. ROM camera blends palettes. If you know the palette system the game uses, it achieves quite stunning visuals with just like a few colors and blending between the palettes, so this is very important. So basically it loads palettes from the settings and from files, and it blends them at runtime to create a new one. And it can keep updating the runtime one, for instance, when it's raining. When it's about to rain, sorry. And the ROM camera, we're talking about the ROM camera, I got way sidetracked there. It leases sprite lasers. A sprite laser is how the camera interacts with stuff that can be drawn. And the camera has a microphone, which is how it interacts with the sound system, I suppose. Like positional sounds and sounds that depend on which room you're in. So what the hell are drawables? A night drawable, or maybe, yeah, let's go this order. What the hell is a sprite laser? Not very important, just put your sprites here. That's how it does. Put your sprites here. It links the camera and the drawable. So the camera, when it has to interact with a drawable, it does so through a sprite laser. And the drawable itself has to implement this interface. It's an interface drawable, iDrawable. Initialize, apply palette, add to container, and draw. Not part of the interface. These two have big asterisks because they are not called automatically for you except in a few rare conditions. The game calls init, and draw. You are supposed to apply the palette on it, you are supposed to add the container on it. Apply palette and draw container might be called under other circumstances. For instance, when the rain is about to come, it might reapply the palette every frame to compensate for like it getting darker. When you're chomped, when your slug cat is chomped by a lizard, it's added to the subcontainer of the lizard's jaw, and it's so you have to handle that kind of situation of being added to a different container. And then after that's done, you're gonna be re-added to the null container, and when you're added to the null container, you're supposed to place yourself back in the layer that you're supposed to be. I didn't mention that the room camera has layers. Layers will be very important if you ever talk about the rendering system for the game, which honestly deserves its own lesson. So we might do that later, but yeah, the room camera has layers, and layers are how you stack things above or below each other at like a macro level. Then you can do some micromanagement too, but that's picking layers how you pick where you're going to be drawn. Okay, we mentioned drawables, sprite lizard. Might want to mention a little bit of what happened in the draw call here. I mean, if you're new to game development in 2D, this might be like a shock, but you move yourself relative to where the camera is in coordinates. I'll just cover this in the draw stack lesson at some point. We mentioned that the camera has a microphone. The camera has a virtual microphone. It's in charge of running the ambiances. I think the room camera loads the ambiances from the room settings. So the room has settings, the room camera goes into the microphone and loads the ambiances there. I think that's how it goes. I don't remember. It might be like on room camera.new room. Virtual microphone also handles position sounds. So the virtual microphone is positioned relative, so it can have some sounds positioned relative to it. How it's positioned, it follows the same abstract feature that room camera does. I think the room camera actually moves the microphone, if I don't recall correctly. So all these ambiances and position sounds are actually sound objects. Sound objects are Unity objects. What? Yeah. Basically, playing a sound through Unity, it's easy, way easier if you just use a Unity game object in a sound component, and then that's being updated by Unity at whatever rate it needs to. Was that it? That was everything that is like perceivable, visualizable in the game. Room camera, sprites, and the sound system. So we've talked about how the game is loaded, how are the abstract systems organized, how they interact with the realized system, how that interacts with the visible system, like the camera and what's on screen and the sounds. What's left, I think, is just really the player progression. So this is your save file, pretty much, that is held on memory. It goes back and forth between memory and the actual file quite a lot, but the idea is that you have a progression state, which is not a save state. So there's like a global progression that holds stuff like your unlocks, flags of what you've seen in the game, your map progression, and then the save states for your playthroughs. All three of them. Like Monk has one, Survival has one, Hunter has one. What's in the save state, you might ask? And there's a bunch more stuff. So, weirdest one first. There is a def persistent save data. Essentially, the save state is supposed to all roll back when you don't survive. Slugcat dies, start the cycle again, except for this. This one persists. This one is saved every time, whether you survive or whether you die. It holds your karma, it holds echoes you've visited, it holds passage progression, essentially stuff that messes with the game reloading or you're dying. It has to be stored here. I think it also stores the mark. So whether you have got the mark from Pebbles, when you get the mark from Pebbles, you can just quit out, and that's gonna be saved anyways. And we exploit that in the speedruns. But yeah, that's the odd guy. That one is saved every time, whether you die or not, whether you die or survive. Then we have the rest of the stuff. MISC word save data. It is essentially conversations that you had with Moon or Pebbles. Is there other stuff in here? I think it stores whether you've been to a scavenger toll in that playthrough, so it can give you the prompt. I don't remember. Also, Iggy's tutorial state goes in here, I think. Several flags, including glow. The neuron glow. Also just tossed in the save state for some reason. I'm forgetting something. I'm reading through this again. I realize I forgot something. I will have to look the name up again later. Later. Regional state isn't here. Regional state is the state of the world that you're in, and the world that you've been to. You load a game, it has an empty save, and it has no regional states until you load the first region. So when all of that loading happens with the overworld loading, world loader, etc., that is going to become, when that's finally saved, when the game saves, that's going to become a regional state. So Outskirts regional state does not exist until that is loaded and saved. In the playthrough that you start, you're gonna not have a whole lot of these until you visit the regions. So what happens is that the game save file grows as you visit more places. On a save that you just started, you only have your first region saved, and when you visit everything, you have all of the regional states in there. Yeah, the regional state is where the serialized objects and a bunch more stuff actually. What is serialized in regional state are the physical objects. Abstract physical objects can be serialized and deserialized. So whether like where the creatures are, where the items are, creature states. Have I really not been through creature here? No, we have. Okay, abstract creature state is very importantly serialized. Creature relationships are serialized too. Essentially, the regional state contains the world, which contains the abstract stuff serialized. And that's it for the regional state. So the stuff that I forgot to add here relates to the session. The session is what you've eaten, what you've killed. So you know the statistics screen for Hunter, that's all saved cycle by cycle in... Oh, the name of the thing, I completely forgot. Okay, I'll check one thing in the Inspire, don't sue me, video code. I want to go to Rainward Game, Session, Save State, Player Session Records. So Session Records is the thing I was trying to think of. Alright. Session Records. Oh my goodness, drawing from mouse sucks. Yeah, and that's the last thing that's saved, and that's how you get Hunter's statistics screens, to remember everything that you did at all times through your playthrough. More or less, it's buggy. So like both the regional state saving, the death persistence save data saving, the session record saving are very buggy. The game checking for Tinker data at the start of its update, it's also super duper buggy. Essentially, you can mess around with a lot of this if you know what you're doing. Once you start modding, You learn how to cheat the game using its own bugs. It's pretty amazing. Have we been through everything? Christ. The answer is yes, we've been through everything. That was what? That was 50 minutes more or less? What's my uptime? That was 50 minutes minus the 5 minutes that I spent at the start listening to song, so that was 45 minutes more of a lesson. I think I'm happy with what I talked about here. What I didn't talk about here was... So what did I not talk about here? I didn't talk about the drawing stack and the shaders that the game uses, because that's fairly complicated on its own. Might do that at some point. I didn't talk here about creature AI, and I didn't talk here about the player code. And creature AI might deserve a bit of a lesson of its own. It's going to be 20 to 30 minutes talking. Draw stack is going to be easily 40 minutes talking. Player code is a lot. It's a 7,000 lines file. I could spend a day going in very fine detail on this, but I won't. Player is just a creature. If you want to think of the player as literally anything else in the game, you can. It's just a rock that moves when you press buttons to move and has really sweet animations, a lot of them, and it does a lot of stuff. I'll stop talking now. Thank you all for listening to me. I don't know how to end this. It was pretty open-ended. But yeah. Sorry if I didn't interact much with chat. I wanted to stream this, but I also want this to be like recording friendly, so I have notifications and everything disabled. I'll let you guys take a good screenshot of this, and see you guys next time. Goodbye. My arm has to reach the other screen. Now I have to click the button. Goodbye, y'all. Oh, it stays. Oh, dang it! I couldn't swiftly leave. I know what to do. There we go. Goodbye.